So next we're going to move on to our speakers for today. So it's my pleasure to introduce our day chair, Meg Waterman. Meg is the president of Aloft Technologies, a firm committed to pilot health, comfort, and safety using design to make the best aviation headsets. Her educational background wouldn't suggest that this would be her career path, though. She studied Western art history, particularly the ancient Roman world, at Kalamazoo College and the American University of Rome. After college, she took on a variety of jobs that sounded fun at the time. Galleryist, if I'm saying that right, matchmaker, closet designer, before she realized that a foundation in business would help in any field. Meg got her MBA in entrepreneurship at University of St. Thomas here in Minneapolis, and then spent a brief stint in consulting in Atlanta. Summer in the South drove her back, and she calls the Twin Cities home since 2008. Russ Michelitz introduced her to Rotary in 2013. A month-long trip to India introduced her to the power of Rotary to build community and to do good in the world. So please welcome Meg Waterman.
Thank you, Ross. It is my pleasure to introduce Brian, who is going to lead us in some curling later on, it sounds like. As many of you probably know, Brian Kimmis works at Dunwoody College of Technology. And if he doesn't tell you that, the constant wearing of Dunwoody apparel, as you see here, is the not so subtle way of advertising it. That is his current vocation, but he's worked in a number of different careers and states over the past 15 years. He began his career as a sports writer for the Forum of the Fargo-Moorhead area, worked in politics in Montana, Virginia, Massachusetts, Iowa, and Minnesota, and spent some time as a facilities project manager for the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx before his career as a fundraiser. He attributes his success in his careers to his willingness to say yes. Want to cover a girls' high school cross-country meet? He said yes. Want to move 2,500 miles across the country for a primary campaign where your candidate is the underdog? Sounds fun. Want to manage a professional sports facility even though you have a political science degree? Sure. Brian applies that same willingness to say yes in other areas of his life too. Want to serve on that board of directors for an organization that specializes in running group homes, including a shelter for sexually exploited youth? I'd be honored. Want to join a Dungeons and Dragons game and as a halfling bard named Lem? Sign me up and bring me my flute. Want to chair the vocational service committee? Absolutely. If you ask him to join your card or board game group, have a beer at a local brewery, go for a bike ride, or lead a vocational roundtable discussion, there's a good chance he'll say yes to that too. Just ask him. Brian?
Well, good morning. So I'm our vocational topic today is networking. I wanted to expand a second here on the say yes philosophy. So right, that's kind of my philosophy of the networking. It's the philosophy I didn't even realize I had until about 2 years ago. A coworker of mine asked how as an adult I continue to make friends. And that's a question I've never really thought about. Every state I've lived in, I've always made friends. It's the thing that comes easy to me. And she's like, how do you do that? I go, well, I say yes. And she's like, what do you mean? I go, Ray, you know how I asked you to join my Marvel watching Zoom group and you said yes to that? And yes, that's a real thing I did during the pandemic. And she's like, wait, so that's how you make friends? Well, yeah, you say yes, and then you meet people, and then eventually you ask them to do something outside of that area you met them. You realize that's kind of how I've networked. And so that's, so that was the say yes. I've never actually heard that as a proper networking theory, but that is my networking theory. It's also a theory to make friends as an adult, which again, I've been told is hard. My wife tells me it's hard. And I like people. So I don't understand why people don't go and make friends. But here I am, right? I'm at Rotary because my last 2 jobs, I said, who wants to join the Rotary Club? I raised my hand, right? And then now I get to be friends and networking with all you wonderful people. So today we're going to talk about networking. So we're going to have some examples of what networking might be. I've never heard of the Ben Franklin effect until this. Thank you, Gail and Kurt, for the Go Giver and Ben Franklin effect. I have those on there's pieces of paper on each of your tables with the discussion questions. So we're going to take about 15 minutes just to kind of go through at your table, discuss these questions at your leisure. And then please, somebody do record brilliant and non-brilliant thoughts alike. They can be shared with the group. So it'll take about 15 minutes to discuss at the tables, and then I'll come back up here. Then we'll go around kind of each table and chat. And if there's a table of 2 back there, if you want to join a larger table, if you want to just have the 2 of you, you're welcome to do that. But feel free to join a larger group. Any questions before we get going? I've never actually been here for a vocational discussion before, so this is my first one, and I'm leading because why? I said yes. All right, thanks everybody. We'll be back in 15 or so. All right, welcome back everyone. So I hope you all enjoyed networking. While talking about networking, we are going to just kind of quick run through the room here. We only got a couple of tables, so shouldn't be too bad. I'm really I got my producer going stretch as I'm trying to get Greg set up here for the camera and microphone. So while I'm doing that though, I will take the advantage and I'll just share a couple of insights from our table as the first one. I think this was I'm not sure Ellen even meant to talk about networking, but I thought it was a brilliant thing. She just talked about how the fact that she doesn't know things about somebody is what makes them interesting to her, which I found to be just almost the epitome of a maybe an intrinsic networker. So what she does to find out about you is she asks, right? And that's just, I think when it comes to networking, that's a powerful thing, is to ask questions, right? It should be a genuine reciprocal relationship. Another key kind of we've learned is maintaining relationships, right? People talk about having still people in their lives from childhood, right? Elementary school people they still connect with, right? So maintain those relationships. And then a really good way to get to know people is to go out and do something with them. Curling, for example, on April 15th, the Frogtown Curling Club might be one way of doing things with folks. So that was our table's insights. And so we'll maybe just start over here to my right at Andrew's table. If you guys can have Greg come with the microphone and camera and share some brilliant or non-brilliant insights.
Yeah, I'll go really, really quickly. So for us, networking meant many things, but probably you'll agree that it means connections, new opportunities, new friends, new perspectives. And as Jim pointed out, it starts with curiosity. You're curious about what we have in common and what makes us different. And that is how we build friendships with new people. So it's, new relationships, just better self-awareness, and also networking helps us to elevate our own skills. What are we good at? And how can we develop skills that we're lacking? And to close, something that we discussed at the end of the conversation I found very interesting was what networking will be like for the next generation, like the ones who've been through COVID, the ones who have not experienced in-person networking. Will networking change for a younger generation who will be going back to physical environments? What would that look like for them? Thanks.
Great, thank you. Steve, let's have your table go next.
I always feel like I'm getting knighted when you come over here, Greg. So thank you. It's like a sword or something. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the respect. So let's see what has worked. We discussed being more powerful to be in person versus online. You just pick up so much more. So that's always important. And then having a list of pocket questions, that go-to questions that you have. I did a Dale Carnegie course like 15 years ago, and it was like talking about like just having 5 questions that you can just go to no matter who you're talking to. And then networking just opened up business opportunities that you didn't know existed. We shared a story about, saying yes to something, and that turned into something else. And I started an Amazon business off of networking things. So saying yes is important, and networking is rules. Smash that like.
Thank you. Let's go back to Dick and Chris, your guys' table back there. If you have anything you'd like to share.
So Dick's point was that our network kind of disintegrated as it went over here. We started with 4 people. Anna and Sean were here. We didn't agree on everything, and those 2 left to do. Yeah, the lawyers went. That's, the lawyers were persistent. So I don't know that we had any brilliant ideas. We did have a disagreement on. Some of us thought, networking is not it's kind of a distasteful term, or we weren't inclined to join something if we call it networking. Sean, on the other hand, disagreed, said, no, I join something if it's called networking, because I know they're going to be intentional and we're out here to help one another. And that's a good thing. His idea was that you network best by making connections. And, if you connect two people, you've kind of done a favor for two people, not one. And that's a great way to build your network. Anna's thought was it's more about a long-term kind of relationship building. And I think, those are both true. But I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Gail, have your table go next. Len, thank you.
Oops, let me get to, okay. We actually had a very good discussion, and hopefully I get all the points in. I think the biggest point that we made and told different stories that sort of related to this is really intentionally being proactive in wanting to meet people and build relationships and start with a foundation with no intent of getting anything back, but just going and meeting people. By doing that, you continually build those relationships, and then something may come later on down the pike. So in other words, that go-giver mentality. And then we discussed the Ben Franklin effect. And if indeed by asking someone to do a small favor that they won't probably say no to, but is their expertise, how good does that feel for that other person? And so we talked a little bit about that. But I think the other thing that we talked about is how do we bring this back to Rotary in terms of building relationships and making people feel welcome, and what does that look like for the future for us as well?
Okay, thank you. And Ross, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can share your insights or just take the microphone away from me and call it a meeting. That's up to you.
Thank you so much. The microphone. I got it now. Brian, as you're probably.
That was my table. So that was
All right. So Brian, as a thank you, a book given to a local student from a community leader such as yourself. And I know that you already have plenty of Dunwoody pens, but here's a Rotary pen as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Meg. And I also want to thank our volunteers for today. Our greeter, Jim Eaton, the reflection from Ellen Archibald, the 3-minute vocational from Gail Noakes, our day chair, Meg Waterman, thank you, our speaker, Brian, Zoom masters, Brock and Greg, and club administrators, Steve and Dick. Thanks for all you do. Please continue to invite those guests. Next week, our exchange student, Vernon Castile, is going to be speaking. So please come support him, invite your friends. So he'll be talking about his experiences. And then please remember to sign up for Rotary and curling. So with that, go out and have a wonderful Rotary week.